Shalom, shalom, brothers and sisters. And once again, this is Brother Brandon Judah Matt Duffy, representing, you know what, Solid Foundation International Ministries, bringing you so-called Negroes, Native Americans, and you Hispanics the full truth, nothing but the truth, and the whole truth, man. Okay? So we're not going to be before you very long, but however, what we're going to do is we're going to elaborate on Christopher Columbus, because we know that Columbus Day is the day which is October 12th, 2015, and we're gonna expose this Columbus Day because these so-called white folks, they like to glorify this day as some day of celebration. So before we get into the lesson, we want to say all praises due to Yahweh, all praises due and all glorifications due to Yahweh by Hashem Yahushua. Double honors to the elders that have set up camps throughout America to edify the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And last but not least, salutations to the Akim that's preaching his truth on the highways and hedges in sincerity. So let's get into it. Now, you may know this guy right here. I have a couple pictures that I will be showing. You may know this guy right here. As you can see, this is Christopher Columbus. All right, and we're gonna bring out basically some facts on this guy, not opinions, but some facts to show you that Columbus Day, however, let me see, to show you that Columbus Day is not a day of glorification for you so-called Negroes, Hispanics, and you Native Americans. Okay, Columbus Day is not some type of day of glorification for you guys. I'm just putting this out here to let you so-called Negroes, Hispanics, and Native Americans, to let you understand that you are known as the lost tribes of Israel. You are known as the chosen people pertaining to the Bible. Okay, God's chosen people. You are those children of Israel that are descendants of the slave trade. Okay, and also descendants basically of Jacob. That's Negroes, Hispanics, and Native Americans. So let's continue to move on and elaborate about Christopher Columbus. Okay, so we're gonna talk about the destruction of the indigenous people of the Americas, and as you can see right here, we're gonna talk about these people. Okay, the destruction of the indigenous people of the Americas, predominantly by the Spanish conquistadors. Let's see, did I have an image of those? These basically are known as Spanish conquistadors. This is something how they looked. The Spanish conquistadors that slaughtered the Indians, man. So we're gonna elaborate on that, about the Spanish conquistadors and British Puritans, and finally the American settlers. So let's bring out some facts about Christopher Columbus. All right. Basically, he was known as the Hitler of the New World. But the difference between Christopher Columbus and Hitler is basically that Christopher Columbus was like 100 times far worse than Hitler. All right, because people claim that Adolf Hitler was a real bad guy, which he was, but he was basically 100 times worse than Adolf Hitler could ever do, man. All right, and basically his real name is not even basically Christopher Columbus. He's known basically since he was sailing under Spain, he was known as Cristobal Colon. That's Cristobal Colon. And by the time the story was printed in English, his name became as Christopher Columbus. And the history books portray this European explorer as some sort of hero, basically, when in actuality, he's to the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere what Adolf Hitler is to the so-called Caucasian Jews 100 times, man. Just remember that. So he's not a hero, okay? Even though they like to display him as a hero, he's basically a savage. He implemented genocide and all different type colonialism and all different types of atrocities this man carry out on the indigenous people, man, such as basically the Native American Indians and primarily the Taino Indians, okay, which are the descendants of Ephraim. They call these the Boricua Taino Indians, which means Boricua means brave. They call these the Taino Indians, which are the descendants of Ephraim. Ephraim was one of the sons of Jacob. So these Indians right here, man, are from the tribe of Ephraim. They are not even known as Indians. They get this term Indian from Christopher Columbus called them Indians because supposedly he thought he was in India, and the people of that land he just classified as Indians. But they not Indians. They not basically even though they was known as the Boricua Taino Indians, they are basically, their biblical nationality is Ephraimites from the tribe of Ephraim. Now once again, Ephraim was one of the sons of Jacob. So these makes that will make these Israelites as well. And these Indians, they did not speak Spanish or Italian or any European dialect. These Indians, they spoke Paleo Hebrew. Now Paleo just means ancient. So they spoke ancient form of Hebrew. That's what they spoke, man. Okay. And it was proven by the Bat Creek stone that the Indians was speaking in that Hebrew dialect by the Bat Creek stone that was found, okay, in the Western Hemisphere. So let's go on. Okay, let's go with the scriptures. We're gonna go in Blue Letter Bible for a second. And let's look at Deuteronomy 28:15. All right, so that's Deuteronomy 28:15, and we know what the Deuteronomy 28 chapter reads. It's basically based on blessings and cursings. All right, this is basically when it gets to Deuteronomy 28:15. It speaks about curses, because the Most High basically told the children of Israel. Let's go to Deuteronomy 28 verse 1, and then we'll come back to Deuteronomy 28:15. So we're going to Deuteronomy 28:1, and we'll go back to 28:15. Deuteronomy 28:1, and it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord Yahweh thy power, to observe and to do all his commandments, which I command thee this day, that the Lord Yahweh thy power will set thee on high above all nations. So he told the Israelites that basically if they will hearken diligently into his voice, that just simply means to keep his commandments. The Lord Yahweh thy power told the Israelites that he basically would set them on high above all nations if they were obedient to his commandments. But you know, the children of Israel, which are you modern day Negroes, Hispanics, and Native Americans, you wasn't obedient to the Most High's commands. So what happened to you? He put curses on you as a nation. And this is Deuteronomy 28:15, because it says, but it shall come to pass, meaning that if you won't, basically, it's self-explanatory. Let me read on. But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken. That means if thou wilt not listen, and to the voice of the Lord Yahweh power, to observe to do his commandments. So if thou wilt not hearken to the voice of the Lord Yahweh, to observe, to do his what? To do his commandments and his statutes. He said basically, which I command thee this day, that he said it in his word, y'all, that all these curses shall come upon thee, and that thee is talking about you modern day Negroes, Hispanics, or some of you might like to classify yourselves as Latinos and Native Americans. Basically, these are the curses that came upon us as a nation. Why? Because we did not hearken to the Most High commandments, y'all. And as you begin to read Deuteronomy 28 chapter, beginning with the 15th verse, if you would read from verse 15, scrolling all the way down to the 68th verse, those are all the curses that came upon you modern day Negroes, Hispanics, and Native Americans. Okay. And we're just going to be focusing on the Northern Kingdom, which are the 10 Indian tribes. All right. We're not going to focus too much on the Southern Kingdom, which are the Negro tribes the Negroid tribes now. The southern kingdom of Israel being Benjamin, Judah, and Levi, which is the so-called Negroes, West Indies, which are the Jamaicans, and the Haitians. We're not going to focus on that southern kingdom, which is the Negroid tribes. However, we're going to focus on the northern kingdom, which is the Hispanics and the Latino tribes, which are the Indian tribes. All right, pursuing these curses, because we're going to bring out the truth behind we're going to bring out the truth behind Christopher Columbus. We're going to bring out the truth behind this guy, and basically and show you that he was a savage. He was a pirate and slave trader, and he sold the indigenous people, man. Okay, he sold the indigenous people. So we're going to bring out truth on this guy. Let's go back to Blue Letter, and we're going to show you just basically dealing with Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, starting after the 15th verse. We'll show you the main curses that fell upon you Hispanics and you Latinos, because you are the chosen people, whether you receive this or not, man. Okay, this is why the Most High allowed Columbus to do this. The Most High allowed the Spaniards and the Italians and the British Puritans and the settlers to take you Latinos. He allowed the so-called white man to get above you, man, because you broke his commandments. All right. This is why Christopher Columbus was given the power, man. All right, so let's continue to move on. All right, let's look at some curses now. Let's see, what can we find here. We're gonna look at the primary ones. Okay, let's look at this right here. Deuteronomy 28:30. Thou shalt betroth the wife, and another man shall lie with her. Basically what that means is betroth means to be engaged, to be pledged to a wife. So the Most High was speaking through Moses in the spirit to the Israelites, saying that basically that if you don't hearken, these curses will come upon you. And basically one of these curses is thou shalt betroth the wife. That means you will be engaged to a wife. You will be in basically you will be pledged to a wife. It says, but another man shall lie with her, because that other man, basically pursuing the Deuteronomy 28:30, basically was let me reload this. I think I lost my pictures. But when it was talking about Deuteronomy 28:30, that another man that shall lie with her was the Spanish conquistadors and the Italians, man. The Spanish conquistadors, which are the Inquisition, which is Spanish conquistadors, which conquistadors means conquerors. So the Spanish conquerors, those were another man that shall lie with her, that raped the native woman, that took wives from their husband, the native wives from their husbands. And Christopher Columbus, man, as you can see right here, let me reload all these images. Sorry for the inconvenience, but we're gonna get into this lesson. We can see that Satan don't want this lesson to go forth, but we gonna do this through the spirit and power, Yahweh Shem Yahushua. So that other man with the Spanish conquistadors, it says, thou shalt build a house, and there shall not dwell therein, because that's basically talking about when it says thou shalt build a house, how the Native Americans, man, okay, the Native Americans, they built various teepees, okay, and they built up the Western Hemisphere primarily how they wanted it to be. They constructed it how they wanted it to be, but it says that thou shalt build a house, and thou shalt not dwell therein. Why? Because their possessions were taken, man, by the Italians and the Spaniards, which are the Europeans, the so-called white man. All right, thou shalt plant a vineyard and shall not gather the grapes thereof, because right, all that hard labor and work that they invested in on planting different types of vegetations and crops, their corn was stolen. You know, they all different types of things. Their tobacco was ravaged, they were stolen. Thou shalt plant a vineyard and shall not gather the grapes thereof, because the Spaniards came over and made sure that they didn't gather, that they didn't benefit from their labor, from their hard work, man, because the Spaniards took their resources. These just some of the curses in Deuteronomy 28, dealing with the Latinos who like to call themselves Hispanics, but you are really the Israelites from the northern kingdom of Israel. It says, thy ox shall be slain before thy eyes. Deuteronomy 28:31. That means basically that the Europeans, when they came over, their ox is pursuant to buffaloes. Thy ox shall be slain. They slaughtered the buffaloes. They took all the hide. I mean, they really just, the northern kingdom got it bad by these Europeans, man. It said, thou shalt not eat thereof, because they took their source of food. Thy ass shall be violently taken away. That ass is pursuant to they cattle, they buffalo, they herds, they stock. It was taken away. It was taken away by the Europeans, and they did it right in front of their face. It says, from before thy face, it shall not be restored to thee, because once they took it, they didn't give it back, because they took their possessions, and also they killed the natives in the spite of it, in the midst of it. Thy sheep shall be given into thy enemies. That means thy buffaloes, man. All right, and the herds that they possess, it was given to the Spanish conquistadors, and thou shalt have none to rescue them. See, because thou shalt have none to rescue them, because the Most High wasn't with the northern kingdom, man, because they transgressed the Most High's laws by indulging in human sacrifice. You know what I'm saying? You had these Indians that indulged in human sacrifice, and they was worshiping nature. They was worshiping the sun deities and different types of elements of the earth. They was worshiping them as God, and they forgot about the Most High, Yahweh Shem Yahushai, man. They didn't praise and reverence him anymore. And so what did he do? To pay them back, he dropped the curses on them, pursuing Deuteronomy 28, man, that we're reading. He allowed the so-called white man to take them down, man, to jack them up, because of their iniquities and their disobedience. And he also gave Christopher Columbus and his man the power to conquer these people. We'll show you that as well. All right. So it says, thy sheep shall be given into thy enemies. This is Deuteronomy 28:31. And thou shalt have none to rescue them, because the Most High wasn't with the Indians, man. Deuteronomy 28:32. Thy sons and daughters shall be given to another people. Yeah, because they took the indigenous sons, the indigenous daughters, the natives, the Indians, basically, which are the Israelites. They took their sons and their daughters, and it said they shall be given to another people, man. As you can see right here, they took their sons and daughters. I think I have an image, and they sold them. All right, they took them as slaves. They busted their families up and took them as slaves back to Spain. All right. So that's what happened to these native women, these native boys, and these native girls. They was isolated during slavery. They was taking the slaves back on boat. Most of them died before they can get to Spain. But that's what happened. Pursuing Deuteronomy 28:32, thy sons and daughters shall be given into another people. What people were the sons and daughters given to? The sons and daughters was given to the Spanish conquistadors right here. All right. As you can see, the indigenous people, which are the Hebrew Israelites, the Taino Indians, Salah, excuse me, the Taino Indians, which is the Boricua, Taino Indians from the tribe of Ephraim, and the Indians, as you can see, their sons and daughters were given to another people, which were the Edomites, the descendants of Esau, which were the Spanish conquistadors, the Inquisition. As you can see, more Spanish conquistadors in the back, and you can see how they basically are invading the Indians' territory, man. So they infiltrated their territory, and they took the Boricua Taino Indians as slaves, man. All right, that's pursuing Deuteronomy 28:32. Thy sons and daughters shall be given to another people. Thy eyes shall look and feel with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in thy hand, man. And it says there shall be no might in thy hand. That means that the Most High wasn't with the children of Israel any longer. There should be no might in thy hand. There was no might in their hand. They was conquered. That's why they call themselves Spanish conquistadors, because conquistador means conquers. And they conquered who? They conquered the Taino Indians, man. All right? The descendants of Ephraim, one of the sons of Jacob, which are you Israelites. You Indians are Israelites. You Native Americans are Israelites. You Hispanics, you Latinos, you Israelites, man. You was conquered by this damn devil right here, man, because of your transgressions. You didn't want to keep the commandments, so the Most High chose the so-called white man to take you in bondage, man. And you Native Americans, man, you 10 Indian tribes, you Hispanic tribes, you got it first, man. All right. And then later on, we know the Southern Kingdom got it by the Babylonians and so forth. But primarily, we focusing on the Indian tribes, the 10 Indian tribes, which are the Northern Kingdom. Let's continue to read on. We're not going to go over all these curses. We're just going over the main ones. It says, the fruit of thy land and all thy labor shall a nation which thou knowest not eat up. So the fruit of thy land, basically, because when Christopher Columbus came over here, basically, he when he made his first voyage, when he settled out in the year of it was August 3rd, 1492, I want to say. Let's go back to Christopher Columbus right quick. All right. So it was like I don't know what's wrong with these images. Just bear along, brothers and sisters. So when Christopher Columbus on August 3rd, 1492, when he settled out, basically he slipped out of this region called Palos de la Frontera. All right. And he basically slipped out of Palos de la Frontera on his flagship, which was known as the Santa Maria. Christopher Columbus, as you can see right here, he basically left on a ship called Santa Maria, but it was not only one boat, it was two more ships that came along with Christopher Columbus, which were the Pinta and the Nina. And it's like it took him like 10 weeks basically to reach his destination in the Bahamas. All right. And when he finally reached his destination in the Bahamas, we know that Christopher Columbus made four voyages total, right? We're not going to give you the whole full story. We're just going to elaborate on some of it. But we know that Christopher Columbus made 4 voyages. Now, what I'm doing is just reloading all these pictures. Okay. Christopher Columbus made 4 voyages. Let's pull the screen back some so you guys can see it. I think I have just it's way too close. All right, so let's pull it back. All right, let's reload this one too as well. So Christopher Columbus, when he basically made 4 voyages, I want to say. Let's get the right image. You brothers and sisters Babylon. Christopher Columbus made 4 voyages total. His first voyage, basically, when he left out from Palos de la Frontera on his flagship, which was Santa Maria, and along with him came two more ships, was the Pinta and the Nina. Like I said, and 10 weeks later, on October 12th, he landed in a place called San Salvador. He landed in a place called San Salvador, which was like located in the Caribbean islands, basically the Bahamas. As you can see right here, he settled out, and on October 12th, that's Columbus Day. That's the day that's known as Columbus Day, man. I just want to put that before you. And on October 12th, he landed on San Salvador, which was an identified island in the Bahamas. And later on, he reached Cuba as well. As you can see, these are the first, second, third, and fourth 4 voyages that he made. And the first voyages is in red, as you can see, where he came. The first voyages, as you can see right there, that's when he landed in the Bahamas on this place called San Salvador. And then later on, he made his way to Cuba. And then on December 6th, he landed basically in the part of Haiti, which he renamed that to La Spaniola or Hispaniola, which means the Spanish island. And Christopher Columbus renamed that land to Hispaniola, which means the Spanish island. And we're gonna show you, according to the scriptures, that these so-called the so-called white man, which is the devil, he every time he conquers lands or regions, he names those lands after his own name. Not Genesis a lot, but Psalms 49:11. This is Psalms 49:11. We're gonna show you this because he named that region Hispaniola. See, it says, their errant thought is that their houses shall continue forever, because the white man thinks that his domain and his kingdom is going to continue forever. But the Most High is going to destroy the so-called white man kingdom, which is America, is going to be destroyed with thermonuclear destruction. It says that their dwelling places to all generations. Yeah, because he think that their dwelling place is going to last forever, but their dwelling place is going to be destroyed through the power of Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushua. Look at this. It says they call their lands after their own names. Now, did we not go over that? All right. When simply Christopher Columbus, let's get back to that image. When he made that first voyage in the year 1492 to 1493, when he came across San Salvador, and then he made his way to Cuba, and then on December 6th he landed in this region right here, which is which is modern day Dominican Republic, which is Haiti and Santo Domingo. He renamed that Hispaniola, man, which is the Spanish island. But he didn't name it after his own name, but he named it Hispaniola. So that just proves the scripture right here, man. This is prophetic truth. They called their lands after their own names. All right. So dealing with Christopher Columbus, all right. He described the islands when he landed in those islands. Basically, when he landed in those islands, man. See if we can get a better picture or something. Like when he landed in those islands, he classified those islands as very fertile. He said they had an excessive degree beyond the comparison of most beautiful field trees and thousands of kinds of tall, beautiful trees. And he bragged about, in the addition, how he found a nightingale and other little birds of thousands of kinds. He also said the land was rich in abundance of honey. He said it had a great variety of fruits and many mines of metals and rivers and many great and most of all, he bragged about the gold. That was the main primary thing Christopher Columbus was focusing on, the gold. All right, that's what caused bloodshed from Christopher Columbus. That's what caused greed. Okay, bloodshed. All right. So when Christopher Columbus got over there, man, he was bragging about all these things in that land. And basically he on his second voyage, he was basically more ambitious than the first. But like I said, Columbus, when he made his first voyage, let's go back to right here. When he made his first voyage, Columbus seized men, women, and children. And I'm talking about these are the so-called Indians, which are the Israelites. On his first voyages, what Columbus did was he seized Indian women, Indian men, Indian children, which were the Tainos, and he took them back to Spain. He put them on boats like circus animals, and to be honest, most of the Tainos died on the voyage. Okay, and they was dead like within 6 months, man. Okay, and Christopher Columbus, he just threw the corpse overboard, man. That's what he did. I'm telling you the truth about this guy. We gonna expose this guy So you guys won't never celebrate, you Negroes, Hispanics, and Native Americans won't never celebrate his goddamn holiday again, man. All right. All right. So his second voyage, when he settled out, he selected 550 of the best specimens he can find, and he allowed this man to take whoever they wanted, which turned out to be basically another 600 specimens. And then they journeyed back to Europe. The journey basically the journey back to Europe was so deliberating for the captives that Columbus ended up even during the second voyage, man. When Columbus made that second voyage right here in the blue from 1493 to 1996, when he departed from and returned to right here, as you can see, when he made that second voyage, he threw over 200 corpses of the indigenous people, man. Threw them overboard. All right. So I'm just trying to pull out some points dealing with the Spanish conquistadors right here. Okay, how they tortured, they maimed, they raped, they slaughtered, and they burned the Indians alive, man. All because of the search of gold. This happened, man. I'm gonna just show you some images how they mutilated the Indians. As you can see, they got the Boricua Taino Indians. They strangled them by their necks. You see this post, you see that beam, that cross beam going across, and they kindled fire underneath their feet. As you can see, the Spanish conquistadors torturing the indigenous people, which are the Israelites, which are the descendants of Ephraim. They hung them by their necks, man. They hung them in like groups of 12 in the honor of the 12 disciples in Christ, man. All right, but that, just remember that Christ, the Christ that they was putting on those Indians at that time, was not the Christ of the Bible. That was Cesare Borgia, that in the year 1492, Rodrigo Borgia, which is the sixth Pope of Rome, he set his second son up, Cesare Borgia, to be the new Jesus Christ. Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo revised him to the new Jesus Christ. So when they hung those Indians in the honor of the 12 disciples in Christ, they was doing that to the new revised image of Cesare Borgia and those 12 disciples, which Leonardo da Vinci painted as the Borgia family. And you can see that they was forcing Catholicism also on these indigenous people. That's why you Hispanics, man. That's why you Hispanics is heavy in that Catholicism, because of those Spanish conquistadors. They was Catholics, man, and they put that Catholicism on you Latins and you Hispanics. They put it on your ancestors, man. So let's go back to the image, and you can see basically what was done to the indigenous people, the natives, the Taino Indians, which are the descendants of Ephraim, the Israelites. They also took little kids by their ankles, like little infant babies, and they bashed their brains against devices such as like wood, stone, and other rugged rocks, man. You can see right there. So why all this happened to you? The reason why all this happened to you natives and you Hispanics is because you simply disobeyed the Most High, man. Okay, this is why basically the white man, when he settled here, this is why he invaded you. This is why he murdered you. This is why he raped you natives, man, until you barely exist. And then on the top of that, he called it Happy Thanksgiving, when he would slaughter thousands of Indians and mutilate thousands of Indians. They would give thanks over their corpse, man. That's basically, that's where Happy Thanksgiving comes from. Because when these conquistadors was murdering these Indians, they was giving thanks for bloodshed, man. All right, that's what they was doing. They gave thanks for conquering and causing bloodshed in the land. All right, so we gonna go back, and this is scripture, man. We gonna show you Deuteronomy 28:49. So we going back to Deuteronomy 28:49. These are one of the curses that came upon you Hispanics and you natives, man. We're going to read it. It says, Deuteronomy 28:49, the Lord shall bring a nation against thee. Now, that nation that he brought against you indigenous people, you Indians, okay, you Boricua Taino Indians, the Azteca Indians, the Mayans, you have the Inca Indians, all you different tribes of Indians in the North, Central, and South America, the Lord brought a nation against you, man. From far, from the end of the earth. When it says from the end of the earth, it's talking about the Eastern Hemisphere, because we know that the Native American Indians resided in the Western Hemisphere. All right. They resided in the Western Hemisphere. Okay, let's see, can we find a map? See, the Native American Indians resided in the Western Hemisphere. They resided in North, Central, and South America. Now, pursuant to Deuteronomy 28:49, that nation that the Most High sent against the Indians, which are the descendants of Ephraim, which are the modern day Puerto Ricans, that nation that he brought against them from afar. When it says from afar, that means he brought that other nation from the Eastern Hemisphere, which is no other than Europe, man, because they came from the Eastern Hemisphere across the waters. They crossed the Atlantic Ocean, all right, and they came across the Atlantic Ocean to the Western Hemisphere. As you can see, they came from Europe and crossed the Atlantic Ocean, and they came to basically the Western Hemisphere. They came to the Bahamas, the Caribbean Islands, man. So when you go back to Bible prophecy, it says the Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. You got to understand, because this speaks volumes. First of all, it says they will come from the end of the earth. Now, what is the end of the earth? The end of the earth is basically when you come from this end all the way to that end. I'm going to show you basically. The end of the earth is Europe, Asia, Australia. This would be the end of the earth up in this region right here. All right. They came from the ends of the earth. All right. Which is the Eastern Hemisphere. And they settled across the Atlantic Ocean to the Western Hemisphere. But they didn't go to North America. They just landed in the Bahamas and the Caribbean Islands. And they landed on a small portion of Central America. All right. Because speaking on Columbus, he never set foot in the land that will become the United States of America, which is classified as the USA. Out of his 4 voyages, they took him to the Caribbean and a small detour to Central America. So actually, he had no idea the continent of North America even existed. So basically, that's what's pursuing the Deuteronomy 28:49. They came from the end of the earth, the Europeans, the Italians, the Spaniards, and they came as swift as the eagle flight, because that's what these so-called Europeans use as their symbol of power. And they still using it to this day, because what is the mascot for America? The American bald eagle, man. So that tells you the so-called white man is the devil. And the Most High gave you so-called white folks the power to conquer his children for their disobedience. Says a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. Why it says a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand? Because Christopher Columbus, basically, he was known as Jewish, but also in documents he's classified as Spanish. They wasn't speaking the same language that the Boricua Taino Indians was speaking. They wasn't speaking the Paleo Hebrew. See these Boricua Taino Indians was speaking Paleo Hebrew. That's what they were speaking, Hebrew. But the Spanish and the Italian settlers wasn't speaking the same language. They were speaking, the Spanish was speaking, the Spaniards, basically the Spaniards from Spain was speaking Spanish, and the Italians from Italy was speaking Latin. So they wasn't speaking the same language when they came over from the Eastern Hemisphere to the Western Hemisphere to overtrodden these indigenous people. They were speaking 2 different type of languages, and that's why Christopher Columbus, he on his voyages, he took translators, man, that spoke the ancient Hebrew, that spoke Aramaic and the Paleo Hebrew. He knew, because he knew that he knew that God's chosen people was basically was located across the waters, man. He knew that, because Columbus, however, you may find this kind of shocking, but Columbus he basically he had very keen interest in the Bible and in biblical prophecies. He would often quote biblical texts in his letters. So you got to understand, like, for example, like, part of his argument was that he submitted to the Spanish Catholic monarchs when he sought their support for his expedition to travel out to the West Indies. He based it on reading the second book of Ezra, man. The second book of Ezra, chapter 13, verses 1, stopping on 50. Because when you read in the apocryphal books, the books that the Catholic Church took out the Bible, in the 1800s, it's known as the apocryphal books that was taken out the Bible. Christopher Columbus read these apocryphal books, man, and he read second Ezra, chapter 13. He read that whole chapter, second Ezra chapter 13, and it tells you in second Ezra chapter 13 that how the Hebrew Israelites, after 3 years of the Assyrian captivity, how they took counsel among themselves to leave that land and to another land where never mankind dwelt, man. And it said basically, second Ezra chapter 13, when you read those books, it tells you that it took the Indians a year and a half to get to this new land, which is called modern day America. Back then it was called Osiric. So second Ezra 13 speaks volumes too, because it tells you that after the Assyrian captivity, the northern kingdom of Israel, the 10 Indian tribes, they left basically through the Persian Gulf, like, and down right here on the east coast, I want to say, Africa, under the Africa, and they settled all the way across until they reached South America and then on Central America and North America. It tell you that in second Ezra, man, chapter 13, in the apocryphal books. And Columbus knew that because he would read those books, man. He had a keen interest in the Bible. He knew that. And he would read those books. And basically, Columbus, you know, I'm thinking that he must have saw himself as the man in that vision in the book of Ezra, you know, chapter 13. And the so-called Indians, as the people he would conquer. So he knew, man. Columbus read the Bible on a daily basis, man. So Christopher Columbus, like I said, he wasn't no hero. He did a lot of things to the indigenous people, man, which are the modern day Israelites. Like right here, you can see basically how Columbus would punish the indigenous people for not bringing him sufficient amounts of gold. I wanted to go over this too. I don't know about if I still have it. Just showing you some of these images. Let me see. Let me go back on that. But it tells you how Christopher Columbus basically would cut the hands off of the indigenous people if they didn't bring him sufficient amounts of gold. It tells you that, man. He would cut their hands off and leave them bleeding to death. You know, because there was one guy named Bartolomeo de las Casas, I want to say. I'm going to type him in right quick so you can see what I'm talking about. This is Google search dealing with images. I'm going to type in Bartolomeo de las Casas because he was an eyewitness to all of this, what Christopher Columbus and his henchmen did to these indigenous people. He reported basically the atrocities that was carried out on these people, man. I mean, like I said, you just see right here just a little bit of it, but they really came down on these northern kingdom of Israel, these 10 Indian tribes. They beheaded them. I mean, they burned them alive. They tortured them. They raped, robbed. They murdered them. They did so many things that's unspeakable, man. You know, and Bartolomeo de las Casas, he was an eyewitness. Let's type him in. Let's see. It says Bartolomeo de las Casas. Let's click on here and let's see what we get. Because he was basically an eyewitness of this, man. He left a description. He eventually became a Dominican friar and he fought against the Indian rights and he recorded things that he saw, man. And you can see him right here. His name is Bartolomeo de las Casas. And he recorded documentations on what the Spaniards did to the indigenous people, man. And like I said, man, I don't have the images of what was carried out on these people as concerning the Spaniards slaughtering them, but these images is basically very, very, I mean, disturbing, and they also they can't be visualized, man. I can just give you this right here, but you know it was bad. Let's continue on. But Bartolomé de las Casas, he basically recorded. He stated that whenever the Spaniards found them, basically when the Spaniards found them, they pitilessly slaughtered everyone like sheep in the corral, and basically it was a general rule among Spaniards to be so cruel, so that harsh and bitter treatment would prevent Indians from daring to think of themselves as human beings or having a minute to think at all. So they would cut an Indian hands and leave them dangling by a shred of skin. Just imagine that, man. They cut those Indians' hands and left them dangling by a shred of skin. You know why? All because Christopher Columbus wasn't getting a sufficient amount of gold, and he was, I mean, man, he was going in. So, and he would cut their hands, leave them dangling by a shred of skin, and then he would send them on, and he would make smart comments saying, "Go now and spread the news to your chief." And basically, something else that the Spanish conquistadors did to the indigenous people, like I said, man, these just a couple images. They will basically test their swords and their manly strength on the captured Indians, and they would place bets on slicing off the heads or cutting off the bodies in half with one blow. And that's not all what they did, man. They these just some images, man. They burned and they hanged captured chiefs. Widespread massacres, including children. They burned them. They dashed their brains out. They took, like I told you, man, concerning this image right here, as you can see, this Spaniard dashing his kid against this hard substance right here. You know, they dashed their brains out, and after they did that, they fed their brains to their armored dogs, man. This is what happened during the conquest of Christopher Columbus in the 1400s, man. So we not making it up. I'm just trying to shed some light to show you that Columbus Day is not the day to be celebrating, man. It's not. It's a day of genocide. And you individuals that don't know anything concerning genocide basically is just the deliberate killing of a large group of people, especially those of a particular nation or ethnic group. That's what genocide is. And it was carried out, man, on the northern kingdom of Israel, man. Because why? We went in those curses, you know, and that's what was carried out on them for their disobedience, you know. And Christopher Columbus, like I said, he was a murderer, man. Okay, he was a pirate, slave trader, and he sold indigenous people. It's nothing nice about Christopher Columbus. I just want to put that out there for you people. I mean, basically that think that this is some sort of heroic icon. And like I said, De las Casas, he also stated that because we was going over Bartolomé de las Casas, he also documented that he said that more than 15 million died on the mainland in 40 years, man. And he documented that in Hispaniola. Hispaniola basically had like let's go back to the Caribbean. He said Hispaniola right here. Hispaniola had like 3 million people when he arrived. And he said there in 1502, he said 40 years later, they only had 200 people left. That's a lot of killing, y'all. That's a lot of killing that Columbus did. And he did this all over greed, man. Because he simply wanted to take their resources, you know, and he wanted to trot in their land, benefit from their heritage, man. And he did that. So imagine Hispaniola having 300 million Boricua Taino Indians, and then Bartolomeo de las Casas say after he arrived there in 1502, 40 years later, it was only 200 left. They killed a lot of indigenous people, y'all. And you goddamn crackers, you Edomites, you gonna pay for it, man. You can bet your ass on that. You gonna pay for it. So you can just hold on, Gad. Don't worry about that, man. Because recompense is coming to you goddamn devils for what you have done to our brothers and sisters, man. You can rest assured. All right. Basically how they would cut the end of your hands off and leave them dangling. You know what I'm saying? You got it coming, man. Because you so-called white folks, you haven't paid for this. And I want to bring out a couple scriptures on this, man. Because this Christopher Columbus Day, stupid ass Negroes, Hispanics, and Native Americans, you shouldn't even be celebrating this holiday, Columbus Day. This doesn't have a goddamn thing to do with your nation. Because if you knew the truth, you Negroes, Hispanics, and Native Americans, you'll know that you're from the nation of Israel. And you won't be celebrating this goddamn cracker day of glorification, man. All right? If you knew the truth, but you don't know the truth, man. Let's go to Habakkuk 2 and 12. Some people say Habakkuk. Okay, it says, woe to him that buildeth a town with blood and establish a city by iniquity. Woe to him that buildeth the town with blood and establish a city by iniquity. This Habakkuk 2 and 12. Who did that? Christopher Columbus. All right. Woe, that means destruction to him that buildeth the town with blood. Because that's how he established the Bahamas, man, and Caribbean Islands. And in a small portion of Central America, he built the city by blood, by the bloodshed of these Boricua Taino Indians. By their bloodshed, you goddamn crackers benefited from their blood, sweat, and tears, man. Let's go back to the scriptures. Woe unto him that buildeth a town with blood and established a city by iniquity. Quite sure you know how America was established. All right, and it's not those bullshit ass lies they tell you in those educational systems. All right. Habakkuk, let's go to Habakkuk chapter 1, verse 6. Let's skip over a little bit. Let's go to Habakkuk chapter 1, verse 6. We'll show you this as well. Because recompense is coming on you so-called white folks, man. Okay. It says, for lo, I will raise up the Chaldeans. Now the Chaldeans right here is talking about the so-called white man, the Edomites. It's not talking about the ancient Babylonians here. This is a code mark for you so-called Edomites. You Edomites, you so-called white folks. I will raise up the Chaldeans, that bitter and hasty nation, which shall march through the breadth of the land. Because they did that. The so-called white man, he marched through the lands and took spoils and resources and took their wealth. He marched through these lands and colonized these lands with colonialism. He marched through the breadth of the land to possess their dwelling places that are not theirs, man. Just like Christopher Columbus. He possessed the dwelling places that are not his. As you can see right here, man. He took it. Who did he take it from? The Boricua Taino Indians in the Bahamas, the Caribbeans. And he renamed that land Hispaniola. He took it from them, man. When they came there, they conquered those indigenous people, which are the lost tribes of Israel from the northern kingdom, and they took their land and off rape, rob, and murder. You know what I'm saying? Christopher Columbus raped these little boys, and he took their land, hands down, man. And he did what? He possessed the dwelling places that are not his. This is Habakkuk 1 and 6, man. All right. So we just bringing out a couple things, elaborating on Columbus Day. Let's continue on, man. Let's see what else can we find. Then it says, basically, he possessed dwelling places that are not his. That was Habakkuk 1 and 6. Then when you look down to Habakkuk 1 and 11, let's look at Habakkuk 1 and 10. It says they shall scoff at kings. What kings? The chiefs. Okay, the chiefs of the tribes, of these Indian tribes. They was known as kings. And the so-called white man, the Italians, Spanish conquistadors, they scoffed at kings because they killed kings. And before they killed before they killed the chiefs, they scoffed at them, man. They scoffed at these chiefs before they killed them. They scoffed at the chiefs, man. They made fun of the chiefs, and after they made fun of them, they slaughtered them, man. That's what happened. They scoffed at the kings, and the princes shall be a scorn unto them. They shall deride every stronghold, for they shall heap dust and take it. And you can see, man, that's what the Europeans did. Let's look at Habakkuk 1 and 11. Then shall his mind change, because now the so-called white man want to bring peace and say that we all is one nation. Now his mind changed. He realized he was killing so many people, and he realized that he can't form a one world government with murderous thoughts continuously. So all of a sudden his mind changed. Okay, and now he acts as though it never happened. His mind changed. He shall pass over in a fan, and put in this his power into God. His mind changed after all this killing, man. Now he want to say, let's come together and love one another. But you crackers are some goddamn devils, man. And us as Hebrew Israelites, Negroes, Hispanics, and Native Americans, we ain't got no goddamn love for you crackers, man. All right? You killed all people, you raped, robbed, and you stole this goddamn land, man. And if you thinking we got love, we ain't got no damn love for you crackers, man. We gonna show you recompense when Yahweh Shem Yahushua returns. Because what did you do? You stole native territory, and you built your kingdom. You built your empire off their stolen land, man. And we gonna show you some more verses dealing with Habakkuk. Let's see. So it says, then says mind change, because that's what happened, man. All right. And let's continue on. Let's look at, because we about to close this out. Lamentations 5 and 2. Lamentations 5 and 2. It says, our inheritance is turned to strangers, our house to aliens. Yeah, because that's what happened. The Hispanics, which are the 10 Indian tribes, the Latinos, their inheritance is what? It says, Lamentations 5 and 2, our inheritance is turned to strangers. Who are strangers? Non-Israelite people. White folks. They are not the descendants of Jacob. They're not Israelites. They Edomites. It says in our houses to aliens, because these were known, the so-called white man, he was known as an alien because basically he was unfamiliar to them, man. Because he was known as an alien. Why? Because he traveled from the ends of the earth to the Western Hemisphere. He was known as an alien. And what happened? It says, pursuing Lamentation 5 and 2, the northern kingdom of Israel, the 10 Indian tribes, Hispanics, their inheritance is turned to strangers, man, because the so-called white man, what did he do? He came over here, he stole this land, man. And he had greed on his mind, he stole his land. All these peace treaties that he made with the Native American Indians, and he broke. All right? It's crazy, man. Because I can recall, I can basically recall that I want to say the so-called white man made like 450 peace treaties with the Native Americans, and he broke every last one of those peace treaties, man. You know, so I just wanted to bring a little bit of that out, you know, and I would like to basically close out with two more verses, Genesis 49 and 12. This Genesis 49 and 12. well, not 49 and 12, Salak 49:19. It says Gad. Now Gad, however, Gad is known as one of the 12 tribes of Israel. Gad is the one of Jacob's sons. And the Gadites basically is known as the North American Indians. It says a troop shall overcome him. Now, who was those troops? Those troops were the United States cavalry led by Andrew Jackson. Troops shall overcome him. Yeah, because that's what happened. During the Trail of Tears, the United States cavalry, they overcame those North American Indians. They made them walk from the Everglades of Florida all the way to Oklahoma, and thousands of Indians died because of weather conditions. You got them troops, man. You United States cavalry, man, led by Andrew Jackson, that cracker. You gonna pay, man. All you white folks gonna pay what you did to the Gadites, which are the North American Indians, which are the descendants of Jacob, which are Israelites. It says, a troop shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at the last. What that means, it means Gad gonna overcome at the last, because in the reincarnations, you white folks, man, you got it bad, man. You got it coming to you, because you haven't paid for the atrocities that was carried out on the Native Americans, man. It says, so he shall overcome you at the last, because what's gonna happen, we gonna put you red-skinned race of people, we gonna put your blonde hair, blue-eyed ass in chains, all right, in the kingdom. And I'm gonna show you this, man. Just hold your horses, because this is what's gonna be done to you so-called white folks, whether you will hear it or whether you will forbear it, whether you will believe it or whether you will not. This is what's gonna be done to you white folks, man, for the atrocities that was carried out on the Negroes, Hispanics, and the Native Americans. You can rest assured this is gonna happen. All right, I want you to take a good look at that. You so-called white folks, this is what's gonna happen. That's why we was bringing it out. It said, Gad, in the end, he shall overcome at the last, because this is what's gonna happen. Your ass gonna be in chains when Yahweh Shem Yahushua returns, and we gonna ravish, we gonna rape, rob, we gonna murder your woman the same way that you did all women. You can rest assured, this is what's coming to you. We gonna rape your woman just like you raped the woman. All right, this is what we gonna do to these so-called white women. We gonna rape them in the kingdom of heaven, man. And we longing for that day. All right. Okay. Let's bring out. I said one more verse, but we'll get another verse. This is on my heart to do. Let me bring this one out. Revelation 13:9. It's gonna happen, man. You white folks get ready, man. All right. It says, if any man have an ear, let him hear. That ear represents understanding. So if any man have some sense of understanding, let him understand. Revelation 13:10. He that leadeth in captivity shall go into captivity. Who led you so-called Native Americans, you Hispanics, you Latinos, in captivity? So-called Spanish conquistadors and the Italians, so-called white man. And it says, pursuant to the scriptures, he that leadeth in captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Who killed you so-called Hispanics, you Native Americans, you Latinos with the sword, man? Shall we bring it up? The so-called white man, the conquistadors. See that sword? He slaughtered you Native Americans, okay, you Hispanics and you Latinos with that sword. They took you back to Spain and worked you the hell out of you as slaves in Spain. That's why most of you Hispanics, you Latinos speak that Spanish dialect. All right. And he killed with the sword, man. So pursuing Revelation 13:10, he that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. And this is why we have patience. Here's the patience and the faith of the saints. Now, why do we have patience? Because we know this goddamn cracker is going into slavery, man. And we're longing for that day. And that day is going to happen whether you were here or whether you forbear. Okay? That day going to happen for what you done to the Most High's children, man. Okay? You white man, how you settled here when the truth is that they invaded the natives and they murdered, they raped, rape them till they barely exist, and then they call this shit Thanksgiving, man. You can just tie Columbus Day in with Thanksgiving as well. This is gonna happen to you white folks, man. Whether you believe it or not, get ready, man. This was gonna happen to you, man. This is biblical prophecy. This is what's gonna happen to you white folks for what you have done to these modern day Negroes, Hispanics, and Native Americans, man. This is gonna happen. You sold them. You put them on auction blocks. You sold the Hispanics. You sold the Latinos. Therefore,